Explore the thoughtless sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.
Namaste and in-law catch, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm Zen Benefiel, your host, and as always, please do subscribe, like, share, make a comment. It means the world to all of us to have the partition and have the participation as well. Speaking of participation, I feel so lucky to have these conversations with smart people all over the world talking about deep things and how we find our ways together to work together and make the world a better place. It's all important, especially now. So thanks so much for tuning in. And speaking of learning how to work together, please visit planetaryscitizens.net. You will have the opportunity to download a free book. It's called Planetary Citizens, Awakening the Heart of Humanity. And I guarantee it will tickle your soul and soothe your spirit. So have a good read, and thanks for stopping by in advance. So this week's guest now is Alexander Keehnen. He is the founder of Gaianet, which is a network that he's building a global network where purpose-driven individuals can connect, co-create, share, and receive resources for their projects. He says he's devoted to a conscious, regenerative future for humanity in developing a new earth. He's a network weaver, a keynote speaker, a strategic counselor, a mastermind facilitator, author, and a Myers-Briggs personality profiler too. So we're going to find out more about that. This is going to be an awesome conversation. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
What if your true identity isn't defined by borders, but by your connection to all life? There's a shift happening. People everywhere are waking up, feeling the call to serve something greater. In Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity, Zen Benefiel shares a bold vision and practical path for conscious living. This book is more than inspiration. It's a blueprint for becoming who you truly are and building the world we know is possible. Download your copy of Planetary Citizens from Amazon and step into the future today. The Earth is calling. Will you answer?
Alexander, this has been a long time coming. We've been dancing around each other for a while with Gaianet and Planetary Citizens and our own endeavors off camera. So it's so great to have you here and have the opportunity to dive deep with you today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, cool. So, as you know, oftentimes we're bereft of having the opportunities, let alone taking them, to discuss what's going on inside of us with friends, neighbors, cohorts, people that are close to us, family, because oftentimes we share what's going on inside that sounds really weird and we end up getting stiff arms from everybody instead of being embraced. So we're having conversations that bridge that gap, that demonstrate how we can talk about this, that we're not crazy, we're not weird. Well, we might be a little weird. And most of all, we just want to connect and understand so that we can work together better in this world as a collective. And how we do that starts with a conversation. So speaking of conversations, let's dive into what you experienced as a kid and how you got connected with this greater aspect of being that you're embodying today.
Mm, yeah, it's funny you ask because I'm actually right now I'm in the house in the room where I did grow up. So I've been
How
traveling.
fitting.
Yeah, it's perfect. Like I was literally in this room when I was, you know, 6-year-old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and I was contemplating life, in my bed, not able to sleep, thinking about life. And I remember the very strong notion of I'm gonna make this one count. Like, I'm here now, this is my life, I'm gonna make it great. Not knowing yet like what it would look like, but that
Hmm.
strong notion was there.
Now, is
Um,
that from a perspective of just being all you can be? I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any ego involved. It sounded more like you wanted to be a servant to it.
yeah, live this life the way it's meant to be lived,
Okay.
in all its beauty. And
Yeah, and as a
and
kid, we don't know what that is, but we do want to
no,
be curious enough to find out, right?
yeah, yeah. So this is a small village in the Netherlands. It's close to The Hague, and it's like inside the Matrix, you could
Mm.
say. So my
Well, yeah,
parents are
there's a lot
both,
going on around you, and as we know about the effect of energy and thought forms and thinking and how that interconnected, that's a heavy area to be in with all the things that are going on.
and that's the thing. I remember thinking as a kid, it doesn't make sense how the world is and how people are and how people live and talk and how school works and job and then work for 40 years and then retire, but you're old. And it's like, I couldn't put the finger on it, but it never made sense to me as a child.
Hmm.
But I did look around and I saw everybody was playing that game. My parents, uncle, aunts, neighbors, everyone. So during childhood, I was in the mode of, okay, I'm just gonna play along. I'm gonna ride this wave. I'm a kid now anyway, so what am I gonna
Okay,
do?
play along, find out more about it, and learn how to break the rules, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was lucky enough to be blessed with a good brain. So school was easy for me. Um, I was relatively good at sports, so school minimum effort, outside of school, just fun with friends and sports and games and always doing interesting things. Um, yeah, and I feel my life really began after I finished my university degree in business, and I was 23 years old, and then I moved abroad to Prague, Czech Republic.
Hmm.
And it feels like that's where my life actually began, or at least like a big next chapter.
Sure. Well, you left home, right?
I left home and it was me with my suitcase in a new city. I didn't know anyone there. I did have a job there, which I was going to do for a year, spend a year abroad, figure it out. And that's, yeah, it was within weeks. I met some colleagues there and we went out and introduced some new friends, right? And that's how the social
Hmm.
circle got built. And within a couple of weeks, I got introduced to personal development. Actually, at that time, the very first key was a book on how to pick up girls, how to seduce women. And
No,
that
that's something that, guys that age are always interested in because we're such failures at doing so, right?
I, right, yeah, it was something that was definitely on top of mind while, like going out on weekends, for example, but I never quite knew how to do that. So then when I got a book or I got hold of a book that speaks about that grabbed my interest. And the interesting thing is, so a couple of things I picked up in there. Like one is that there's structured processes to it, like steps. First you meet, you build trust, and then
Sure.
and I felt a big invitation to to try things out, and I was scared, right? Like, he wrote, if you want to get better at this,
Oh,
think of a
yeah,
good
we don't want
opening
to be
sentence and
rejected.
try it, go out, try it with 20 people. I'm like, what? Speak to 20 strangers,
Well,
So my
yeah, it's
heart
like
was
knocking on
pounding, but
20 doors as a salesperson, right? You never know what you're going to get.
that's it. And I do remember realizing there that I'm gonna go do this because if I don't, I'm gonna stand still for the rest of my life. So
Hmm.
either out of the comfort zone, experimenting, doing it, or that. And that brings me back to being here as a small kid. I'm like, I'm gonna make this one count. This one's gonna be
Sure,
great,
sure.
right? So,
Right.
so that got
Well,
me
and
on the
you
track of,
address the unknown, because we all have, maybe not all, the majority of us have a fear of the unknown, especially when we're feeling challenged to step into something with more intention, right? Because we don't know. All we can do is, I don't know if it's going to work or not. Well, let's try it anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's been it's been such a good practice because I applied it later also in business. I got promoted pretty fast in my job. I started in the call center. Within a couple of months, I was holding the record of most calls answered
Hmm.
in a day, right? A few months later, I became team expert. A few months later, team leader. Then the team was doing in 4 months from 12 people, we went down to 9, but the results were better. The KPIs were in green. And it's just, I saw what was needed. I started organizing things. So I took the personal development from just the social dynamics also into the workplace. That's really where I switched from fixed mindset, from being here in the village, to growth mindset, understanding I can grow and become into
Sure.
anything I desire. I just need to find like the right expert or knowledge or track that I trust in, and then go do it and build that within myself through
Right, right.
experience.
Yeah, I can
So
kind of relate to that too. I grew up, my wife, who's from St. Petersburg, Russia, right? I'm from a little town, 6,500 people when it was in its heyday. And, so being from the village and moving to Phoenix, which now has 8 million people, that was a huge shift. And yet it was very freeing. Did you find the same where it's like, okay, now I can really find out who I am?
yeah, it was amazing. It was like a completely fresh start, blank page. Me with my suitcase in Prague, you know? And especially when you grow up in a village, something can happen when you're 8, and then when you're 16 or 20, people are still referring back to it,
Oh yeah.
And there's nicknames and a reputation in a
Yeah.
village.
Oh, you
Everything you
remember
do,
when, yeah, the old people, you remember when you were just a kid and you did this and how, right. Oh,
if so in that sense,
and how do you live that down, right? They
yeah,
hold
and
you in that box.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So moving into a new city just gave me blank slate, and even in there, I started to realize that every day you can show up anew, and every new situation is a new chance to show up anew. And yeah, that's really where something clicked inside of myself, and I made learning a priority because I knew when I learn and grow each day, then I'll naturally like produce more and accomplish more. That takes care of itself. I
Sure.
just wanted to learn and
Were you
upgrade.
aware of all the self-examination that you were going through with yourself?
So, sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, were you aware that, of all this self-examination and that you were questioning everything about you? Maybe not to the point where you were super aware that, oh, okay, I'm in this process of building, but you had the curiosity to continue with what was in front of you in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going back with that question, going back to when I was there. I think part of it was still subconscious, and I became throughout the process I became more and more conscious of those dynamics. Also
Mhm.
because I started to read about the inner game and personal psychology and mindset, and that helped me or gave me a frame of reference to
Mhm.
self-reflect
Do you
through.
remember who the folks were that you found? I know for me, the early ones were like Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Earl Nightingale and, you know, uh,
Listen
Mark
to all of them
Mandino.
too. Yeah, yeah. For me, well, first it started with the pickup books, right? So there was like a mystery, and there was another Neil Strauss, something like that. And then personal development Brian Tracy a lot, also in that period. Tony Robbins, Stephen
Mhm.
Covey. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, those guys came a little bit later. I first got into it, I think, when I was mid-20s, probably, and working for an aerospace kind of company, trying to figure out how to get along with everybody and get them to do what I need them to do without any authority.
you need good
Yeah, I
communication
was in
skills.
charge of $7 million a month in shipments and 800 part numbers at 26. And so I had to figure out that it was brand new. I'd never done this before, uh, you know, um, but it was fun
Yeah,
and it worked. And just in the way that I dealt with people, I rose to the top of the production charts, not knowing at the time, right? Because what I did see was everybody beating each other up emotionally, trying to get from our department, basically materiel, because we were the ones that we were like the central hub of the operation. We made things happen and we had the deadlines and commitments to shipping dates, right? So the buck stopped with us. And it was just amazing how people with a little bit of control were so fearful of not getting results that they became aggressive in trying to get them. And I think that's really what
yeah,
as I grew up, because at that time, in your 20s, you'd understand, you're not mature enough to understand all the dynamics, right? That happens later for most of us. Sometimes it happens younger, and it sounds like it may have for you. Now, in that process of developing your own um, intelligence and sensitivity to those around you. What did you find corollaries internally? Were there any particular um, teachers or masters or books or philosophies that you found most congruent?
yeah, for sure. Um, I remember one book that had a huge impact is Power versus Force by David Hawkins. So the seeing the map of consciousness, the 17 levels, like intuitively, it instantly clicked.
Sure.
And I realized, wow, now here's a ladder worth climbing in this lifetime.
Well,
It's
and it
it,
vibrationally makes sense when you look at things from that perspective.
yeah. So that was a really big one because it gave me a roadmap to this personal development. Until then, it was just grow. Like I focus on growth, and for the challenge that's now in front of me, I find what I need to know and I apply it. And so, like that, I moved forward. Now, the map of
Sure.
consciousness, it gave me an idea of what these next paradigms are about. So I could see my past development, coming from a place of pride here in the village, learning
Kind of
personal
inspire
development,
dynamics framework, right?
responsibility, neutrality landed, this notion of, okay, I'm like 25 now. I have a good job. I figured everything out so far. The rest of my life will probably be fine. Like whatever comes my way, I'm gonna be good. Right? Moving into the willingness of, okay, let's go. I can accomplish anything. So I could see that development and there to understand that the next level was about acceptance was really big because from my frame of mind, I didn't see that. But
Hmm.
him giving me that roadmap helped me reflect on situations and behaviors differently, like practicing
Sure.
radical acceptance, if only just by repeating in my mind. I bumped my feet against the chair, and it's just, wait, accept. Okay, how do I accept this? Okay. And just
Right. You say ouch and
practicing
move
accept.
on, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Now, did you find, I found for myself by just this intention that like one of the opportunities, I met David. Um, I had a good friend that turned out to be his coordinator for his tours.
Oh,
And
cool.
so we brought him into town here. Of course, he lives in Sedona, which is only a couple hours away. Uh, but the convenience of having him show up in my backyard and being able to get to know him and have dinner with him and have conversations was just a real blessing. And those kinds of things happen. There's many others that I've happened to get to know that way. But have there been those kind of instances with you where, at moments when you least expected it, all of a sudden one of these guys that you have, or gals that you've been paying attention to, um, was made accessible to you?
Um, Not directly in the way you're describing. No, I have. I mean, a few years later, I published a book on time management, and
Mm,
through that, I've been able to meet with David Allen,
familiar with
the
David. Yeah.
author of Getting Things Done. So that was cool, but no, not such a beautiful synchronicity as you're describing now. Plenty beautiful synchronicities, but not like meeting
Yeah.
my
Well, we all have.
my
So
guide.
talking about synchronicities, right? It's the serendipitous synchronicities that gives us the opportunity for ego leaps in our activity often, right? What are some of those that happened with you? And if you could kind of frame it in, okay, I was going through this at the time, I was thinking about that, and then this showed up, just to kind of give some breadcrumbs to it, right?
All right, yeah, I need to dig in my memory for that because I
Well,
don't.
good. I asked a good question then.
Yeah. Let me see what I can dig up. Well, I mean, it's funny. I know that especially the past 6 years since I've been doing Gaianet, fully in service of humanity and the new Earth, the amount of synchronicities has exponentially increased. So there's this notion of it's
Sure.
become the new normal. Um, well,
How
one
did that
fun one.
start when you first got the concept? And it's great that I think we can go into this now. When you were exploring how you could serve the world your best, right? What kind of things were going on in your mind and your life at the time, and then what showed up as an answer to your call, or maybe as you answering the call?
Yeah. Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is was March 2020. I was in the Netherlands, and that's when the Corona story came to the Netherlands. And for me, that
Would you like
was
a lime with that?
a line?
A lime with that Corona.
A lime, yeah. Yeah, right. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah, for me, that was a clear sign that the end game has begun. You
Mhm.
know, system closing in at global scale, locking people in their own homes. I'd already become aware of how the world operates in like 2013 or something. The Zeitgeist documentary really laid it out nicely for me.
Right.
Something I'd always been sensing, feeling, and now it was clear.
Kind of validated for you. Yeah. Corroborated what you already knew to be true.
Yeah, yeah. And then with Corona, it was happening on global scale, and there I noticed
Sure.
like now's the end game for
Right.
humanity is
But it
kicking
gave
off.
us a great opportunity though, didn't it? Because the obsession on self-hygiene turns inward. That's self-examination,
Yeah,
on steroids. And then the sequestration. It's like, okay, no, we're not going to give you just a day or two or a week or a month. We're going to give you a long time to sit and think.
yeah, yeah. And what happened in my case is I did my own research. I was in self-quarantine 2 weeks before the rest of the country. Within those 2 weeks, I figured out the whole story, the whole background, and the plan, including the upcoming like vaccines, QR codes, all of that
Right,
stuff.
right,
So I
right.
knew what was going on. And the rest of the country went into quarantine. I
Well, if you
went into
understand systems, that's kind of obvious, right?
it's
Once,
yeah, exactly. And so for me, that was the moment when I asked myself, what does the world need most, and where can I play a role in that? And
great
that was the
question.
seed of Gaianet. Because I realized also from all my travels before, I've been meeting geniuses all over the world. Like all the solutions are there. We
Mhm.
humans, we can come together, live in harmony with the planet, with each other. All the solutions are there. But these geniuses have trouble reaching the rest of the world. Because,
Sure.
you
Well,
need
most
to.
geniuses have trouble socializing, right?
Exactly. exactly. Like you need to be a guerrilla marketing guru too, or have massive budgets, right? To get things
Yeah.
out there. So we need to
Or
connect this
amazing
issue.
luck.
Exactly.
And is it really luck, though? Because that's where divine, in my opinion, I'm just going to call it divine intervention comes in.
Through the right synchronicities, the
Yeah.
ideas can find their way into the world for sure. Um, yeah, the idea of Gaianet, well, different name at the time, but the central nervous system to connect all the humans who are stepping into the new and all the organizations who are shaping solutions for the new, that's the highest leverage point for me to dedicate my energy to.
Hmm.
That's what landed there. And I asked a
So,
mentor of mine, this is too big for me. How am I gonna find the right partners? And he said, well, maybe just sit in meditation and ask your heart.
yeah.
Right? So that's what I did. And instantly a few names popped up. I called them. They were like, heck yes, I'm in. So within a day, we were six co-founders aligned for this vision and ready to go. So that's also what this Corona period did, is it shaped a sense of urgency for people like this also to like basically drop what they're doing, hear the higher call, and step into it with full energy. So it was a big
Along the way,
accelerant.
did you run into Gladwell's, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point? That's kind of an interesting, because it talks about uh, connectors and uh, all the types of people that are involved in these kinds of um, activities. It's not simply a movement, it's an engagement, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Very true. Very
So with
true.
those six founders, what did you find in common with them as far as the views that you had of what potential could be realized?
Yeah, yeah. That's a really interesting one. It's like in the feeling, it was immediately clear. That's also why my heart proposed them. And when we were together, the vibe, the energy is just so rich.
Mm,
There were like no distorting energies in the room, and it feels like everybody's able to show up, bring in their wisdom and knowledge, and hold back so others can bring in their wisdom and knowledge, and together tune into the collective field and each steward that field in the flow we're experiencing together. And that
sure,
was
sure.
the first time I felt I found the right playing buddies for that kind of game.
Right.
I would
Yeah,
say,
Redfield gets into that sometime in the Celestine Prophecy, right? I think it's the third insight where you learn how to manage the flow, right?
yeah,
You don't speak till it wells up from within you and you listen intently. And there's this energy that is created that there's no agenda other than to be present, available, and contributory to it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so we spent the first couple of weeks aligning on, okay, so what is it that we're doing? What is the vision? What is the mission? What do we value? How are we going to collaborate? And with that, we laid a very strong foundation, anchor of what direction we would look for with that flow.
Hmm.
So that's Gaianet. The entity Gaianet is here to unite the builders of a new earth. So that's what we all set out to work on. And so that period for me was yeah, was amazing. All new network opening up. We had hundreds and hundreds of networking calls. The cool thing in the new earth field is we're all on the same team. So it's very collaborative. So we would speak to one organization, they would immediately connect us with the next one and the next one, and we would start to get an idea of what's already being worked on, what kind of people are working on it, what's still needed in the field, and everywhere we found this just this deep alignment, and it was mostly a feeling, and it's been only until a few months ago that I've managed to bring it back to three organizing principles that I recognize in all of us to make more concrete what it
Mhm.
is. Because we also, we all speak about collaboration and transparency and honesty and living from the heart and stewarding the flow, right? And
Yeah,
harmony.
it's all words. It's like, all right, so where's the core of that and what's it like?
Exactly. For me, it comes down to three organizing principles. The first one is unity consciousness.
Taught the spiral
Self-explanatory.
dynamics and also the Hawkins scale.
Yes, yes. It's also love. It's just a more mindy way to say it.
Well, but I find it so sad and hilarious simultaneously. This is a paradox. Life has a lot of paradox, right? Especially when you're dealing with duality when you're coming from one. And this the expressions that we have, the movements that we make, the silliness that we get involved with to get through all of it, it just um, seems so hilarious that we don't know how to love and be loved. Right? That's the core desire that we have, in my opinion,
Yeah,
from all the research and study, and apparently, you've already keyed on it. So, what is the deal with our ability to love and be loved? Do we feel like it's an enemy, or that we're so vulnerable that we're scared shitless to open up and love somebody, or even to say, "Hey, I love you," or to feel
yeah,
what that's like?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's valid reasons for it. Like they forget to talk about these things in school, for example. But
Right, right. It's
love
like
in
sex ed in
action.
high school. You just don't talk about stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's love in action has been a recurring phrase already from the very start of Gaianet. It's like at the heart, that's what we're practicing. Love in action. So what does it look like when we show up as love, as co-creators, as colleagues, and on an organizational level, Gaianet, how does an ultimately purpose-driven organization and an embodied loving organization function? So it's been a whole journey of inner work too with Gaianet, practicing with forms of holacracy, um, finding out how
Well,
can
you
we.
can't fit in with others if you don't fit with yourself first, right? The self-love, the embracing, the acceptance, just being okay with failing forward, not, carrying a battering ram or a ball bat, beating yourself up with it.
Yeah,
The 70,000 thoughts a day that we have, according to neuroscientists, for most people, I'd say probably 80% of them are self-deprecating. Why would you want to do that to yourself? Emoto Masaru, right? He says, hey, look, you can program water with your energy, and when it freezes, it's going to form just different crystals based on how you project your energy into it. Well, we're almost 70% water. What are our thoughts doing to our own bodies?
yeah.
But we don't think about, now that's science now. It's not philosophy, it's not theory.
That's it. That's it. And the cool thing is, that's what I love about this New Earth field is that everyone is aware of that. Every like to reach this or the regenerative movement or the New Earth field or like this new paradigm, each of us has gone through an individual process of figuring out a lot of stuff and doing a lot of inner work. And I almost see it like us now sticking with our heads above the clouds.
Right.
And
Well, it's
now
like an
now
operating
we
system,
recognize
right?
each other.
You got software that's involved, and you have these low levels of gaming. Let's gamify it, right? You've got this, entry into the lower levels of the game, and you accomplish things. You finally get to the point where you win, and you go up to the next level. But you can't go up to the next level until you complete all the necessary things. Now, what we tend to do is truncate those lower levels and think that we can climb up with shortcuts and finding out, oh, well, wait a minute, what did you get slapped upside the head by a cosmic tube before, and it's like, oh, what did I forget now? Right?
Yeah, yeah, there's still a lesson in there.
What are some of the
Yeah, and that
precepts that you found to that?
Well, I just want to circle back to those
Oh
three
yeah, there was a
organizing
third.
principles because you
Yeah, the third principle.
already naturally brought up the second one, and we spoke about self-love, and that's individual sovereignty. So it's a combination of unity consciousness and individual sovereignty that I see in the space. This understanding that yes, it's all connected. Yes, all is one, seen from a certain perspective, and we are here as individual incarnations to walk our own unique
Sure.
path and be our own unique expression.
Sure.
So
And
those
sovereignty is
two,
not about control or dominance, right?
it
It's about
it's about
choice.
it's about authority. Yes, yes, authority from within.
Yeah.
And so these two with the third organizing principle of regeneration. So that's where the connection with nature comes in and continuous renewal and the desire to add life to life.
Hmm.
That's what I'm seeing across organizations, people, communities in the space, although they come in all different flavors and colors. Those three always come back. That's a uniting factor, and that's the organizing principles to like pinpoint this new game that we've
Sure.
entered into.
Now, for those, and I'm sure it's transgenerational, right? Or multi-generational, I would think anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong. But in that, um, what do you find the role of sacred plants and sacred medicine? Is it more or less prevalent, do you think?
Um, Yeah, I think all plants are sacred to begin with, and
Well, in the personal, where I'm coming from is in the personal journeys of others. And I don't know if you even get to the point where you're discussing that level because you're operating in a much different collective level in the organization. But do you find that that's one of the keys to transcending the little self and embracing the opportunity?
yeah, many people in Gaianet have experience with plant medicine. For me myself, it's been of massive help in sinking from the mind into the heart, feeling the nature connection. Like my first ayahuasca ceremony has been really a game changer in my personal development. Major opener.
How
Yeah, and
was
I know that goes for many.
what did you say major opening? What was the significant factor that or factors that you came across in that experience?
Well, first of all, it was a very deep and difficult experience for me. Like the facilitator I drank with, he's known for his large glasses and strong strong tea, as he calls it.
Sure, sure.
Um, and so I've been going really deep with that. A
Did you
couple of
get to the
things.
point where you felt like you had to lay your body down and leave?
Not that much. It's always been an embodied experience for me. But my
Okay,
body, I was in observer mode as I watched the divine energy race through my body, and it's like pure love, pure light, just filling up my channels and more, and just squeezing out all that there wasn't place for anymore. So there was a lot of purging, but also a lot of movement, a lot of Kundalini energy racing. So that's like a big, like spiritual shower, inner
sure.
shower in a way.
I can relate to that. My wife's I actually met her. She was trained as a piano pedagogue in St. Petersburg at Mussorgsky College, but she came to America at 21, just wanted to come to America and defected. Um, and so years later in 2016, I met her at her Kundalini yoga teacher training graduation. So you can imagine what I stepped into. Um, and it was glorious, right? To have that kind of energy, that intelligence, the ambiance that she carried with her was just exquisite.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So, and for me, like it feels like I made a big step there in that ceremony, in the journey from the mind to the heart.
Mhm.
Like
That 18 inches, that's the longest journey, they say, right?
right. Yeah. Feeling much more connected to my body. And I'm just feeling more space on the inside, in my heart, in my mind. You just said, well, I don't know how many thousand thoughts a day. It's hard to count, but for me, like it's pretty quiet in here and calm and spacious.
Well, right,
And
that's where you can get to. That's where the option of choice, how to think. It's mind management, right? You talk about time management. And I have the sense that this work really is all about management. Easy for me to say, because we pay attention to the intention we have and the interactions that we develop as a result of that. And we're like super self-examining,
yeah,
right? Not to the point, and here's where we find challenge, right? Because in that self-examination, if we see something that we feel like we've missed, right, the first thing we want to do is condemn or criticize our activity instead of, oh, okay, well, that didn't work.
oh,
Now, where can I,
that's
right?
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's
yeah,
that ability to just embrace the moment, not get stuck in it. And what's the phrase now? Fail forward, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
you just pick it up and go. They're stepping stones. Nothing is really failure. It's
But
just your process of learning.
and that's it's such an important point you're highlighting. This mind management is really it's your own internal hygiene, and you do it in the privacy of your own mind. Others cannot like check you upon it, but it's the greatest gift you can give yourself is
Right,
to monitor what's going on in there. And like for me, there are two settings. Like one is green, one is red. Green, you're either in flow, you're in peace, you're feeling good, you're doing your thing. Great. Just go, you know?
right,
And sometimes you get into red. You can get tired, or you may bump your head, or something unexpected happens. And for me, it's been instrumental to get to catch myself as fast as possible.
sure.
Because
And that's
once you're in red,
discipline and
you tend to
training
be
and
you,
techniques,
you
right?
yeah you tend to stay stuck in red unless you consciously snap out of it. So I started to monitor red flags when I hear myself curse or when I hear myself think a limiting belief, like this is not possible or it's not going to work. I'm like, I train myself to understand, oh, you're lying now. This is
Right,
falsehood. This is not true. So stop,
right.
stop, step out, breathe, just do nothing and wait for the next wave of
Sure.
inspiration to come again.
Yeah, I've got a great process for that too. Being a little bit older, I've had a little longer to develop it. And so I got to the place where when I would feel that, because you can feel it first, right? Before you begin to think the thoughts, you
Yeah.
have the sense. And this, congruent with indigenous philosophy with the three brains, right? The first brain's actually your gut. That's where you feel everything. That's where you're connected. The heart is where you discern how you're going to behave with it, and then, or the resonance of it, I should say, more the Hawkins scale and all that kind of stuff. And then once the body has filtered that information to develop clarity with it, then you feed the supercomputer on top of your head, or the quantum computer now is where, right? And use its function. We're just as susceptible to the recursive function, or our operating system is just as reliant on the recursive function as the LLMs are, right? And
Mhm.
it's interesting how, a system that queries itself, which is what recursive function means, a system that queries itself for problem solving. That's what we do. Now, how do you find that in your navigation of challenges that you face in coordinating or facilitating group activities?
Oh, um, that's a multi-layered question.
Yeah, it's multiple
For
layers.
me,
Multidimensional beings? That's understatement for us, right?
yeah, yeah. When it comes to facilitating groups and creative processes, for me, there are just a few key elements and principles that I know, and I follow them, then the result is flow, and from flow, like truth and
Well,
progress
the simpler you
emerges.
make it, the easier it is to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of groups, simple things like clear agreements, like on desired outcomes, on roles, on who does what, on how do we make decisions. These type of things are instrumental. When it comes to more complicated conversations, always having an independent facilitator, so somebody who is guiding the group through a process of conversation, so
Hmm.
that the group can relax into it. They don't have to think about what's next, but they can stay with the
Sure.
content.
Right. Those are kind of
Um,
fun too. I spent almost 20 years doing, they call them partnering sessions. Basically, they're stakeholder sessions for construction projects. These are multi-million dollar projects, 2 to 5 year schedules. And so I'm the guy that stands in the middle of the room doing exactly what you're talking about and figuring out how to read the room, how to provide information to the individuals that allow them to feel safe, secure, vulnerable in speaking what's on their minds and not
yes,
holding anything back because those can be work stoppage elements and those can be hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour. We don't
yeah,
want that to happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Safe space. That's really the main thing. It's also in the book I'm writing now, The Way of the Gaian, which is very much about like how to live these principles.
Mhm.
I'm also highlighting the element of how people feel around you is the greatest currency you have.
Absolutely.
And the element
Absolutely.
of safety
Yeah.
being key. When people can just exhale and be themselves around you, it's the biggest gift you can give, and that's where they open up to share
Sure.
the biggest value
And
they
that's the
can.
core of coaching, right? You and I both do that, providing that safe space, leading that person or inviting that person into that space because it's not forced, it's not contrived, it's a natural space that you can set up because that's how we're built.
Yeah,
We just cover everything up with all these programs that we think are important. And you can't think your way through a system built on vibration. You got to sense your way through it. And
yeah,
we're both speaking in those terms, right?
yeah.
Now, how do you facilitate the transition from that thinking being to the sensing being?
Inside myself or inside in others?
It's self-reflective, right? As you do it in yours, others do too. So how do you recognize it in yourself, and then how do you reflect that and or draw that out in others?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. The latter happens just by a way of being, and people mirror it. And of course, you can talk about it, but it's something we all need to manage inside of ourselves. It's a very private process. For me,
Well,
yeah,
this is
there's
why it's not so private, right? It cannot be if we're going to be successful in working together. We've got to share these concepts and principles and how we feel, not just what we think. Now, articulating how we feel, wow,
yeah.
that's an
Yeah,
abyss, right? You got all kinds of things in there. A lot of them are paradoxical. So how do you navigate those to recognize the paradox and still find that center for flow?
yeah. For me, like I picture my life as steering through space and time, and I steer based on resonance. So when I receive an invitation and I feel good, I know it's for me and it's my path. And when I don't, or I feel contraction, then I know it's not for me. And that's how I've been steering for the past, well, 7 years now. It's actually since I read the
That's a
Surrender
function of the
Experiment.
first brain, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, right. System one
Yep.
or system two. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just that's the gut, right? When you're sensitive to the vibration, you move without thought or consideration.
Yeah.
It's just a natural process.
Yeah. And my mind is observing and it's commenting and I smile about its comments, my mind has all kinds of opinions about it.
Well,
And I
sure.
just
And
smile
and you
because I'm
have all
just
kinds
going,
of perspectives from which you're viewing it as you're in process with it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing that I like to use also to support this navigation is muscle testing, kinesiology.
Hmm. Well,
So
that's how Dawkins scale works, or
exactly.
Hawkins scale, sorry.
Normally, you do it with two people. One keeps their arm up, the other asks a question and pushes down. If it's true, then the arm stays strong. If it's false, the arm goes down.
Right.
Um, I do it with myself like this. Maybe you know the technique.
I do.
So sometimes when I want to tune in deeper to my intuition or to specific questions, I take a moment to like ground, ask the question, and just see what my muscle test says. Yes or no. I also noticed I get different answers depending on which energy center I tune into while doing the muscle
Sure.
test.
Sure.
So I can ask, what does my heart say about this? What does my mind say about this? So that's an additional little tool that's been helping me a lot.
Like, and that's very important too. I don't, I know how powerful my mind can be, so I'm a little distrustful about how I can manipulate my body as a result, right? How I can will things to be true that aren't necessarily so. However, when you get out of this, like, um, I had an experience as a kid. Well, not a kid. Um, I was 23, moved to Phoenix. A friend of mine had died on a in a motorcycle accident, and I found myself reaching out to him in one of those moments. I was laying in bed. We'd been just talking about him, and I'd always been a kind of a necromancer since I was a kid, and I thought, well, why not? Jesus, be your will, and your will be done. Can I talk to Steve? Right? It was what I was thinking in my head, and so I start, projecting his name out and calling out for him. No response, none whatsoever. It got louder and louder inside my head. Still no response. And then I'm thinking, oh well, there might be a few people named Steve out there.
Yeah.
Duh. And so he had a nickname, and it was Blab. And now there's a distinctive nickname, right? So I'm like, hey, Blab, are you out there, man? Can you hear me? And the first thing I hear is my name, and is that you? And I'm like, yeah, man, where are you at? And then just bing, right in this eyes closed, right in the center of my vision, I see his face. And now my ex-wife, my wife at the time, was asleep next to me, or I thought she was. She raised up on her pillow and asked me what the heck I was doing. And I said, nothing. Why? Right? And she goes, I just saw Steve's face. And I tried blinking my eyes and he wouldn't go away.
Oh, wow.
And by that time, I'm sitting up. I have tears streaming down my face because of the reality that it was happening. Because there's no way it wasn't happening if she saw him too, right? Because she didn't have any idea what I was doing. I was laying just completely still in bed. And I said to her, it's been proven that immediately upon cessation of life, the body loses 21 grams of weight. Weight has mass, mass has form. I wonder if we can see him with our eyes open. And she says, I don't care. Room was dark, so I really couldn't see her face. I mean, she says, I don't care. It scares me. You do whatever you want. I'm going back to bed. I'm like, okay. So I laid back down, got my eyes open. Hey, can I see you? I see a gray mist take shape at the end of the bed. Then here's his body, and just looking exactly like he did. 6'4", long hair, flannel shirt, jeans, right? And he looks at me, and all I could say was, pardon the French, far fucking out, man. This is amazing. Tell me, can you travel with a thought? And I see trails going out of the room and trails coming back in. There he stands again. And I said, you go back home, meaning Indiana. I was in Phoenix. He said, yeah. And I said, again, the phrase, right? And I said, no, wait a minute. I know how powerful my mind can be. It's getting back to that, right? Am I projecting your image there, or are you really there? And as soon as I asked that question, I felt the sheets move across my feet. The end of the bed went down. He's got his foot on the bed, his elbow on his hand, on his knee, chin in hand, smiles at me like a Cheshire cat and says, "How's that?"
Wow.
At that point, the only thing I could do, energy was so high, right? I couldn't lay still anymore. I got up, put some clothes on, took a walk for a couple hours, continuing to talk to him about what it was like on the other side. Now, I had an advantage because I'd been there before. I had a question about, in my day of, I want to know the truth and I'm willing to die for it, which is that service question that you asked, right? I went a little farther with it and did. I ended up in the light and beyond in a, indigo background, points of light, and told that I was here to work with those, and then put back in my body, recognizing we're all cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware. And so I spent the last 50 years trying to figure out, okay, how do I explain that? Right? And then learn to work with it. Now, we're doing the same thing with how the activities for organizations like Gaianet and Planetary Citizens and our whole concept of this unity concept, right? This unity consciousness. That's where we're working from. Now, understanding that, coming from a place of oneness, how do you articulate that notion into the world and the organizations so that that concept has more traction, not just in the organization, but filtering out into the world?
The concept of oneness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, plays at multiple levels, but this understanding of you are another me is really
By
big.
and la catch all I can, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and with that in mind, you naturally shape systems that serve the well-being of all. Um, yeah, that's how I see it. So it comes into expression in the way we communicate, the way we organize ourselves, make decisions, the way we design solutions and systems and networks. So the way we care about the environment.
Do you find that you
And
design it, or that their design emerges for you to observe and integrate?
that's in reality what happens. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
distinction because I find that to be true, and those of us that are working in this field, right? Um,
It it's
it's
this
interesting.
guiding question is always what wants to emerge here. And we're sensing and responding, showing up as stewards, as midwives to the process
Right.
of what is being born. Something, and that's happening in and of itself and is way beyond our comprehension. It's just asking for us, first of all, to get out of the way, and secondly, to
Yeah, exactly.
steward the process.
And that's the challenge, right? We get in our own way a lot. And mainly because it's diminished thinking. We don't recognize the reality of the it's not impossible. It is, I am possible,
Yeah.
because there are no limits.
Yeah.
We impose them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because we've condensed into a finite, or what we perceive to be a finite form, without realizing that, oh, this is just the presentation. There are so many dimensions, so much energy, so many playing fields that we're integrated with that we don't understand yet. This is one of the things in talking with Irvin Laszlo, I thought that, okay, maybe he's going to be able to answer some questions that I have as far as this integration process, because he talks about the higher self, right? And how allowing our own being to be guided by that is super important, right? Well, there's still structure in that stepping down of vibrational energy into what we perceive as physical form. And there's some structures of this, solfeggio tones, right? For one, 9 tones. There's the triadic dimensional distinction vortical paradigm, which talks about 9 dimensions that we're able to access in our human form. Doesn't eliminate others. It just says this is our bandwidth, right? And so does the multiplane awareness technique that William Swigert developed in the 1950s. That is a facilitated process that takes a person through 9 planes of consciousness, each of them ascending, and integrating your body on each one of them. Now imagine even conceiving that we have other bodies on other planes, right?
Yeah.
And could this explain the interaction that we have with the ultra dimensional beings that we encounter internally, right? Some of them show up externally, but most of that's an internal process. And again, things we aren't necessarily willing to talk about because they seem so frickin' bizarre, right? And yet, the reality is, if we experience it, that's our truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, that's also where plant medicine is such a big opener because it helps you understand the vibrational nature of reality
absolutely.
and how
Well, and AI is
reality.
helping quantum physics, quantum computing, right? We've had this spiritual knowledge since the Vedas, right? They're the ones that first revealed it. Sanskrit poems said, okay, basically your divine threads incarnate, connected to source and capable of God consciousness. Well, what's that mean? Unity consciousness, right? Individuated, purposeful, purpose driven by design, integrated with the whole.
Yeah,
That's unity, that's diversity in the unity. So now we're figuring out how to back engineer that, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, back engineer or just the funny thing is it's just a matter of surrendering and letting go and observing, and then it all
Absolutely.
happens naturally.
Absolutely. And we say that, and yet there's still some activity that needs to take place, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
like that non-corporeal self learning how to be in form and enjoy the process of
yeah,
activity in it, right?
yeah,
It's like God's experiencing their creation, really. And when you look at it that way, that's not wanting to sound precocious, I guess, for lack of a better, but this God consciousness in form is who and what we are. Each one of us have a particular frequency that's designed for a particular purpose, though. And
yeah.
that's what we're in process of figuring out. And guys
And
like you and these other organizations and the leaders in them, they're a little ahead of the game because they've spent a little more time self-examining to find out.
yeah, this is also where the word weird comes back. So when you track the etymology, where it comes from, weird is an old Irish,
WYRD, right?
yeah, and it means destiny or fate. So the negative connotation of weird only exists in a culture that values normality.
Sure. Same with
It's weird.
apocalypse, right?
Yeah,
Apocalypse was used as a revelation, unveiling knowledge. You'd ask anybody today what apocalypse means. Oh, it's a catastrophic end of the world. Where did that come from?
yeah,
Right? And yet we know that. I mean, when we begin researching, um, even scriptural texts like the Bible, right? The patriarchal system really drove women into the dirt with having them come from Adam's rib, right? The subservient from the beginning. So the patriarch has always put them there. Well, the matriarchal system is far superior
Yeah.
because that's the one that has the global sense, the feminine, the love, the embracing, the nurturing, and guys need to learn that. And those who do excel.
Yeah.
They really
Yeah.
do. So but I know we've got some things going on and you got some things going on where, we only got so much time. So how would you offer advice to those who are beginning or even on their journey to finding their own way in life and something that they can lock into? Maybe lock is not a good term, something that they can emerge into, and a way to help see that process or observe it or get in touch with or recognize it
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, there's of course many things you can do. Like first of all, it's an agreement with yourself that this is now, your next, your new chapter, your new way of being, the new game, the new interaction with life you're stepping into. And from that, all the tools, methodologies, next steps, they come to you naturally as you go.
Yeah, when you
And
commit, the universe
yeah,
acknowledges it, right?
yeah. The biggest thing is to open up new social circles. Go to a gathering you would normally not go to. Connect with networks of people who are living this lifestyle, right? We're like it's practice, and there are other people who are practicing it. And spending more time with those people is gonna help your understanding and your journey in all the ways. Um, I think it was Zig Ziglar who said we're the average of the five people we spend most time with. To take it back to the beginning,
Yeah.
so um, upgrade your circle. Um, yeah, that's the biggest one I would give right now.
Yeah, it's hard. If you're playing the turkey, it's hard to fly with the eagles.
Yeah,
And not all of us are designed to be eagles, right? There's, as in my opinion, when you begin to look at the structure, it's not that there's a top down or a particular hierarchy of power in the structure, right? Yet there is a structure and there is a hierarchy. But it's one that we acquiesce to, not one that we prescribe or impose.
yeah, yeah. So true.
Huge difference.
Yeah,
Alex, this has been just a amazing conversation. Thank you for taking the time and being willing to do so. And I really look forward to future conversations and what we can do together. And I know we're headed that direction.
yeah. Super aligned. This was a lot of fun. Thank you. Keep up the amazing work. I'm here, and we just keep marching forward together.
We will. Cool. And thank you so much. There's a lot of chaos and confusion in the world today. There doesn't have to be for you. You can turn that chaos into clarity. Now, how can you do that? Well, first of all, by talking to me, your coach, integral, transformational, whatever you want to call that. I can help you figure out you so that you can put you in order and then create some action plans to achieve your dreams, whatever those might be. You can achieve anything that you put your mind to with the attention, intention, and interactions that go along with that. And that's what we discover in the process. You might have some great times with the DIY stuff that's online now, using ChatGPT, all of that. That's great, and it might serve a purpose to a point. However, you don't get the empathy, the understanding, the real ear that you would from a coach. So I invite you, schedule an appointment, let's have a chat, and we can find out what's in it for you. Have a great day.